Imagine a monument so precise that, even using cutting-edge technology, today's engineers would struggle to reproduce it. A riddle so deep that, to preserve it, official history preferred to turn a blind eye and protect the comfortable version taught to us in school. And what if I told you that the Great Pyramid of Egypt, that absolute icon of antiquity, may not have been built by the pharaohs, but instead by a civilization so advanced it doesn't even appear in history books? Get ready, because what we're about to reveal is a direct collision with everything you believed about the human past. Behind the scenes of secret discoveries, controversies that shook academia, and physical evidence that challenges the official chronology. This is the story that author and researcher Graham Hancock dared to tell. A story that begins with a simple but dangerous question. What if the pyramid wasn't the work of Khufu, as everyone claims? The metal and wooden plates found near the monument, the inscriptions tied to the pharaoh, according to Hancock, are nothing more than pieces of an incomplete puzzle, or worse, a plot assembled to sustain the prevailing narrative. The most famous proof linking Khufu to the pyramid are painted marks in the inner chambers, discovered in the 1800s. But doubts still linger today about their authenticity. That opens the door to another, even more uncomfortable question. If not Khufu, then who? And here we step into territory that unsettles traditional historians. Because when you look at the Great Pyramid, you don't just see a tomb. You see an engineering feat bordering on the impossible. Each stone block used in the structure weighs on average 2.5 tons, but some easily surpass the weight of a train car or even an entire locomotive. Now try to picture it, hundreds of these stones being carried upriver on the Nile, dragged across miles of desert, and stacked over 45 meters high. And all of this, they say, with ropes, wooden sleds, and the sheer strength of human arms. That is the official version. But here's the catch. No solid evidence shows how it was actually done. The best-known theory is the ramp, a colossal structure that would allow hauling the stones up to the top. Except, according to engineers who studied the case, this ramp would need to be larger and contain more material than the pyramid itself. And most curious of all, no trace of it has ever been found. Not even a sign hinting at its existence. Other hypotheses attempt to imagine internal ramps or pulley systems. But again, the problem is the same: no proof. Tools attributed to the builders, such as sleds and copper chisels, collapse when tested in real conditions. Modern experiments trying to cut and move granite with these methods fail or prove extremely inefficient, even with contemporary auxiliary techniques. It's no wonder many engineers claim they couldn't replicate the Great Pyramid using only the tools attributed to ancient Egypt. Hancock sums it up directly: this wasn't just manpower. It was knowledge. If the secret isn't in the ramps, maybe it's in time. And here the investigation takes an unexpected leap, from the pyramid summit to the weathered ground of the Sphinx. Beside the Giza Plateau, the enigmatic figure half-lion, half-man, guards a geological riddle that could rewrite all of Egyptian history. In the 1990s, geologist Robert Schoch examined the Sphinx not as a statue, but as a rock formation exposed to climate. He noticed deep vertical fissures and an erosion pattern impossible to be caused only by wind and sand. This type of wear, according to Schoch, could only result from heavy, prolonged rainfall, something that hasn't happened in the region for thousands of years. The last period of rainfall sufficient to cause such erosion dates back to the end of the last ice age, between 10,000 and 12,000 years ago. This suggests the Sphinx may have been carved around 10,500 BC, long before dynastic Egypt existed. If the Sphinx is that ancient, it is not a pharaonic work. It is heritage from another culture. And if that is true, the same logic could apply to the Great Pyramid. And it doesn't stop there. At the same period suggested by the Sphinx's erosion, something special was happening in the sky. Orion's belt aligned almost perfectly with the layout of the three Giza pyramids. Researcher Robert Bauval demonstrated that the deliberate offset of the smallest pyramid corresponds exactly to the position of the faintest star of the belt at that remote date. Two lines of evidence, geology and astronomy, point to the same moment in time. For Hancock, this is no coincidence. The builders of Giza knew how to map the sky, measure the planet, and encode that knowledge in stone. And here the story starts to take on even more astonishing contours. Because if these builders lived before the last ice age, who were they? And how could such advanced knowledge simply vanish? If the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx are not works of the pharaohs, then we are looking at remnants of a people who lived and built before history even began to be recorded. A people who, according to Graham Hancock, were not primitive hunter-gatherers, but masters of astronomy, engineering, and navigation. A people he calls the magicians of the gods. Hancock's theory is straightforward and disturbing. Around 12,800 years ago, a global catastrophe, possibly triggered by a comet impact, abruptly ended the last ice age. The event, tied to the Younger Dryas hypothesis, would have destroyed most civilizations existing at the time, leaving only scattered survivors. And it was these survivors who carried fragments of knowledge and advanced techniques, spreading them across different parts of the world. According to Hancock, that is why we find patterns so similar in sites separated by oceans, supposedly without any contact between them. Patterns that include not just pyramids, but also the use of astronomical alignments, precise Earth measurements, and encoded representations of celestial cycles. In Central America, the city of the gods, Teotihuacan, shows alignments with celestial bodies similar to Giza. In Cambodia, Angkor Wat reproduces on the ground the exact shape of the constellation Draco. In Sudan, the pyramids of Meroe repeat mathematical proportions resembling those of Egypt. For Hancock, this is no coincidence, it is a signature, the fingerprints of a lost civilization, scattered as clues for those able to decipher them. And what would sit atop this legacy? The Great Pyramid. Not as a tomb, but as an eternal marker, able to withstand millennia of erosion, wars, and cultural changes. A monument that would not tell its story with words, but with numbers, proportions, and alignments. Among the measures encoded in the pyramid, Hancock highlights the relation between the height and the perimeter of the base, which reproduces with incredible precision the value of pi. The perfect orientation to true north, with an error of only 0.05 degrees, shows geographic knowledge reached only with modern instruments. And there is also the supposed encoding of the precession of the equinoxes, a movement of Earth so slow it takes more than 25,000 years to complete. All of this, he says, indicates that the builders mastered concepts of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering far beyond what is attributed to any culture 4,500 years ago. But to grasp the scale of this mystery, we must look at the most intriguing part, the transport and placement of the heaviest stones. At the pyramid's heart, in the so-called King's Chamber, lie granite blocks weighing up to 80 tons each. The detail: this granite came from quarries located in Aswan, over 800 kilometers away. Transporting these stones would demand not only brute force, but an extremely complex logistics. The official version speaks of river transport along the Nile, followed by overland hauling. But when imagining blocks the size of a locomotive being lifted dozens of meters high with ropes and sleds, many contemporary engineers say the same thing. This is not feasible with the tools attributed to Egyptians of that time. This difficulty is one of the central points of Hancock's critique. For him, the construction was only possible because those responsible possessed technology, perhaps simple, perhaps sophisticated, that did not survive or was forgotten. If these questions already challenge the official version, what about discoveries that never reached the public? In 1993, German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a robot, called UPUOut 2, to explore narrow shafts of the Great Pyramid. During the mission, the robot found something no one expected: a small sealed door, with embedded metal pins, hidden more than 60 meters deep within the structure. The discovery sparked worldwide excitement. After all, what was behind that door? A secret chamber? Some unprecedented artifact? But before Gantenbrink could continue the investigation, Egyptian authorities blocked his access. Control passed to the then director of antiquities, Zahi Hawass, and silence. No opening, no conclusive report, just speculation. This episode marked for Hancock a pattern of behavior. When something threatens the official narrative, the response is not to investigate further, it is to shut down discussion. Decades later, in 2017, another technological advance raised new questions. Japanese and French scientists used muon tomography, particles capable of passing through stone, to map the interior of the pyramid. The result revealed a gigantic hidden space, just above the Grand Gallery, with dimensions comparable to a commercial airplane. A finding that could completely redefine the pyramid's function. But once again, no practical investigation was authorized. No camera entered, no artifact was revealed. Only silence. And this is where the mystery becomes a provocation. Because if something is really hidden there, what could be so impactful as to justify decades of blockage? This question leads us to the most delicate point of Hancock's entire theory. The reason why this story, if confirmed, would change everything we know about humanity. For Graham Hancock, the silence is not random. He believes official archaeology avoids confronting certain discoveries because they undermine the foundations of everything we have been taught. Admitting that the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx are heritage from an earlier civilization would mean rewriting humanity's timeline, and along with it, revising theories, school curricula, and even entire cultural identities. Imagine for a moment that the history we learned in school is only a late chapter of a much longer saga. That the first pages were torn out, leaving us with the impression that we started from zero, when in fact we inherited a legacy. If it is proven that an advanced civilization existed before the last ice age, then it survived a global cataclysm. And this carries an obvious warning: if it happened before, it could happen again. This civilization, according to Hancock, may have built the Great Pyramid as a message encoded for the future, not a tomb, but a warning. The astronomical precision, the mathematical proportions, and the alignments would not be demonstrations of vanity, but instructions, a map of the sky and earth for those who came after. And what would it tell us? Perhaps the exact location of essential resources. Perhaps the recurrence of a dangerous cosmic cycle, like a comet's return. Or perhaps the reminder that, even in the face of destruction, it is possible to rebuild. Hancock points to disturbing coincidences. The impact that would have ended the last ice age is not just a hypothesis. Geological studies show sediment layers with high levels of platinum and nanodiamonds, typical of high-energy explosions. More intriguing, this period coincides with the sudden emergence of agriculture in various parts of the world. For him, this is not spontaneous evolution. It is knowledge transmission. It is the hand of someone who already knew how to plant, harvest, and build, guiding newly established societies. If we accept this, the narrative changes completely. The pharaohs cease to be the creators and become the heirs. The pyramid ceases to be a starting point and becomes an end point, the last breath of a lost golden age. And then we return to that colossal void detected in 2017. What could be stored inside? Hancock speculates that there may be records, tools, or even artifacts that prove beyond doubt the existence of this civilization. Imagine the impact of finding an object with technology incompatible with 4,500 years ago. Or a sky map marking constellations as they were 12,000 years ago. Archaeology would not face a mere find, it would face a watershed moment. But until the space is investigated, we are left with hypotheses. And it is precisely this absence of answers that fuels distrust. After all, if there is nothing to hide, why not open and show? Zahi Hawass, a central figure in the administration of Egyptian antiquities for decades, always dismissed Hancock's theories as fantasies without scientific basis. But Hancock sees in this more than skepticism. He sees the role of a guardian of an official narrative. This clash between traditional archaeology and alternative theory is more than an academic dispute. It is a conflict over who has the right to tell humanity's story. And here is the most provocative point. What if we are not the first global civilization? What if we are only the latest of several that have arisen and fallen? If true, what does that say about our future? The Great Pyramid, silent and imposing, may be trying to tell us something we still cannot, or do not want to hear. And until we open every passage, every void, every stone holding secrets, we are doomed to repeat the fate of those who came before. Hancock closes his reflections by reminding that history is not the property of a group or nation. It is humanity's heritage. And if somewhere above the Grand Gallery there is a piece of this history waiting to be revealed, then it belongs to all of us. Egypt's greatest mystery may not be how the pyramid was built, but by whom and why.